Okay, now we're going to get into the types of trusts. And so there are lots of different types of trusts that you can use. And I'm going to cover all of these. So I get the boring job. I've got to cover all the boring stuff, and then all the guys come in and show you all the really cool stuff, you know. But we're going to talk about the different types of trust. So the first type of trust is discretionary trust, and that's kind of the most common type of trust that you'll see and use. And we're going to cover exactly how they work. Keep in mind too, by the way, not all trusts are the same, because the way a trust is created is a lawyer writes it. So you can go and pick up buy 10 discretionary trusts from 10 different solicitors or lawyers or accountants, and there'll be 10 different ones, and they'll be worded pretty similar, but they can be changed slightly. Okay, so not all of them are the same. That's one thing to realise. But the whole purpose of having a trust is that it separates ownership and control. This is the key thing about a trust. They separate ownership and control. And the key thing that you actually want to do with a trust, in terms of its power and utilising it, is you want to own nothing and control everything. Which is kind of the opposite to the way we're brought up, I guess, or what we innately desire. We want to own our own house, we want to own our car, we want to own things, right? So we can say that they're ours. But if you do own them and you do put them in your own name, well, they can be taken from you because that you own them. But if you don't own it but control it, it can't be taken from you. And also, this is where then you get lots of flexibility in being able to decide what to do with the asset. And also it brings into the power of estate planning, which is passing your assets on to the next generation. So if you own the asset and you've got to give it from you to somebody else, are you transferring an asset? Yes, you are. And you're transferring, there's all sorts of issues that can occur. But if you control it, what do you pass on to the next generation? Just control. Don't have to pass on the asset. Okay, and we'll go into that a lot more. But that's really the key concept of a trust. So let's have a look at the different roles associated with a trust. There's trustee, the beneficiary, there's what's called the appointer or the principal, and the settler. And we're going to explain what all of these are. So with a trust, you've got the trustee and the beneficiary. So the trustee can be an individual or a company, but the trustee controls the trust. The trustee is the one who decides what happens to the money or the assets. And the beneficiaries are the ones who are entitled to it. Now you can be both, yeah? You certainly want to be a beneficiary of your trust, of course, right? The beneficiary is entitled to anything. Now, in this scenario, who owns the asset? That's right, the trust does. Who controls the asset? The trustee. That's right. This is the key point to get across, because what we're now talking about, and in legal terms, this is called, down here is called, beneficial ownership. That's a legal term. Beneficial ownership. This is called legal ownership. Okay? Now the term beneficial ownership, I think, is what confuses so many people, because you don't actually own it. Right? But they call it that, beneficial ownership or entitlement. You are entitled to this asset, you're entitled to the income, but you don't have it until it's given to you. Does that make sense? Right. If we sell this property to another person, we're changing ownership, aren't we? Okay, good. If you try to take a property you own and put it into a trust, are you changing ownership? Yes, you are. And the reason that it affects the taxes and all these sorts of things is because you are changing beneficial ownership. Right? And when you start changing and messing around with beneficial ownership, that's when you start having to pay. It's like selling it. It's like transferring it. So that's a key point to realise, because over the course of this weekend, especially when the guys get into their really high-end stuff, they'll talk about entitlement or beneficial ownership. And they'll say, this works because we're not changing beneficial ownership. Okay? It's a very, very key point. Okay. There's another role in a trust called the appointor. The appointor is the one who decides who the trustee is. This actually is the most powerful role in a trust. This is the most powerful because if you don't like the trustee, what can you do as an appointor? Change them. Just like that. No power. You're gone. Someone else can come in your place. Now, if we do that, if we change the trustee, have we changed ownership? No, we haven't. So would there be capital gains tax, stamp duty, or any implications on there? No, because beneficial ownership is remained the same, yeah? Who should be the appointer of your trusts? Yes, you. Yeah. You can make your appointer if you trust, all right? You might find us in Spain after a while. But you want to be the appointer, and I've heard stories, I don't know how true they are, but I've heard stories of, big deals going through and one guy being the appointer on the whole thing and taking control of the lot, and just nothing anyone could do about it, all legal. Pretty scary, huh? Pretty scary people could do that. But you also want to make sure you're the appointer. Now, you can have more than one appointer, by the way. And the other thing too is when it comes to estate planning, passing your assets on to your children, is this a role that you want to make sure gets filled correctly? Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, so in your will, or in the trust deed itself, you really want to make sure you assign a appointer to the right people. All right? Because you're going to give them power over all of this estate. Either that, or just never ever let your children find out who the appointer really is, and don't tell them what the appointer is, and never share my books or seminars with them, and keep them in the dark, right? But that's a very, very, very important role. It's the most important role in a trust. But again, how many people knew that? Right? It's not commonly known. Not commonly known. It's sometimes called the principal too. So if you've got a trust deed, you can flick through the deed, and it'll say in there who the appointer is, or it's sometimes called a principal, depending on the deed. All right. Now, another role that's quite a funny role, really, is what's called the settler. Usually a faceless person. But the settler is the person who starts the trust. And they start it usually with $10 or something like that. And this is kind of goes back to the old days, really, of how trusts were set up. It's like somebody said, okay, I want to put this money here and keep it and give it to the grandchildren or whatever it might be. Boom, there's a chunk of money. And that's kind of been followed through now as I guess really it's more of a custom than anything else, because half the time you get people to be the settler that you don't even know, or it's just some friend of the family or something, because the thing with the settler is they can't be a part of the trust. Right? They can't be a beneficiary or a trustee or anything. And the settler puts in $10 and that starts it, and then they have nothing else to do with it after that. Okay? But when you look through, if you ever look through your trust deed, you see the settler, that's who the settler is. Got no power, nothing, they just start the thing for you. So those are the different roles of a trust, but the appointer is the most powerful one, as I've mentioned.